So my name is Adam McLeod, and I am the Western Canada Sales Manager for Lucid Motors. So Lucid, if you don't know, we are a California-based luxury electric vehicle company, or as I like to say, we're a tech company, Silicon Valley tech company, masquerading as an OEM. We are the maker of the Lucid Air. It's the world's longest range, fastest charging electric vehicle. And I lead the Western Canada sales team. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Next one, we'll go to Curtis.
Hi, everyone. My name is Curtis Schickner. I'm with OGCI Climate Investments, a London-based venture fund that invests in decarbonization technologies, so specifically CO2 and methane reductions and carbon capture. And my firm invests in all things around the decarbonization spectrum. So I've spent a lot of time in vehicle transportation, vehicle decarbonization or electrification, and I am excited to be here. I represent our San Francisco office.
Great, welcome. Now coming up north, Dom, based out of Vancouver.
Hi, everybody. Dominic Huang, COO and co-founder of Damon. And in 2016, when I met my co-founder Jay, we had the vision of creating the world's safest, smartest, connected motorcycle in the world. And we think we've achieved it. So, company's 5 years old, proudly Canadian. And we're going to build these motorcycles in our backyard, so really proud to be here.
Great. Jean-Marc?
Last, Jean-Marc, nice to meet you. I'm from LETENDA. I lead the business development. We are a transit bus manufacturer. We developed from the ground up a zero-emission bus, so started from scratch. We now have an electric version and soon to be a hydrogen version that we'll be delivering in 2024. The company is based out of Montreal, so we designed and already built our first bus, and now we're in Series B and going into production next year. Very happy to be here.
Awesome. So my name is Yuan. I'm a VC with a 51-foot and AgTech fund, $50 million early stage investing deep tech, deep science companies. And before my work as a VC, I used to lead Tesla's M&A team and their internal VC team. So I've seen companies from both software to hardware to autonomous driving. So today will be a really interesting conversation because I prepared some really direct questions. So if we address the elephant in the room first, I think the industry and our entire economy is facing a downturn. The question is how long that will be and how this will influence our markets. So my first question to the four panelists are, from your perspective, how will the market and the economic downturn influence the mobility market from your perspective and the company that you're leading? So I'll start with Adam. I know, Adam, last week you were actually in the Seattle studio opening up more stores and expanding, which is awesome. Do you think about the economic downturn? Do you think about people's buying and purchasing power?
Absolutely, yeah. We sell a very expensive electric car, and one of the first things that happens when things go south is luxury goods just kind of take a hit, and so we're very keenly aware of that. How it's impacting us, I think it's too early to say. We're still kind of in this honeymoon period of this growth period as we're expanding our reach, getting our brand known, and from a distribution standpoint, still figuring out that. But it's definitely, it's something that we're very concerned about, especially as you tack on, even here in Canada, a recent proposal for a federal luxury tax, which hits our customers kind of doubly. So, yes, the answer is yes. It's definitely going to affect us. We're just not sure how much yet.
Got it. And next, I wanted the same question go to Curtis. So from an investor perspective, what are some of the things that you are advising to startup companies? There are a lot of entrepreneurs here. So how do they weather through the downturn? And what are some of the advice and metrics that you're looking for to make investment in the new era?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk recently about how the public markets have flowed down to private markets and what that does on valuations, valuation expectations. Primarily that's driven by public market comps. When those go down, they trickle down to private companies. So from an investor perspective, a lot of venture funds have been advising CEOs to take more capital if you can get it right now, but then also focus on your burn and trying to reduce expenses as much as possible. So there's been a renewed focus on cash flow positivity, so generating cash flow, not just burning at all expenses possible. I think from an investment perspective, though, sitting here from a venture fund perspective with capital raise at this point, the thesis hasn't really changed. There's still a large macro trend of electrification of vehicles. 18 of the largest 20 OEMs have announced electric vehicle offerings by 2025 or 2030. Like, that's not going to change based on market dynamics over the next year or two. So as we think about investing over the next 5 to 10 years, that focus still remains the same. So it's less of an impact on really early stage investors.
Okay, that's helpful. And Jean-Marc, in terms of the market trend, what are some of the observations that you're seeing, and what are your insights?
Actually, on the bus side, most of our customers, the vast majority of our customers, will be public transit agencies, so government agencies, and both in Canada and the U.S., the governments are clearly committing to long-term electrification and zero emission. So this is not just they can weather the storm. So short-term economic, let's say, like maybe on the business to consumer side, it'll be more affected than we will. So we're not seeing much. We're not concerned about that part. I think what it does, what's been happening with COVID and everything else that happened in the last couple of years, is we're seeing that the transit agencies are looking at their distribution model, like delivery model. If you looked in the past, everything was a big bus. Everywhere you go, you'd see one size bus. It was a 40-foot bus or an Arctic bus, and then all of a sudden it's okay. Well, people are not they want to get there faster. We're talking about first mile, last mile. I think it's pushing the transit agencies to look at their delivery models and saying, okay, how do we get closer to customers to get them out of their car, get it onto mass transit, whether it's a big bus or it's rail or something else or people walking. Really, it's not. We can't just a 40-foot bus is not everything for everything anymore. So that whole. So I think it's creating an awesome opportunity for us. We have a 30-foot bus, so it's a little bit smaller. So it kind of goes into between that, what all the big buses that were typically used, and the other options that of a very small bus. So I think we fill in a really nice gap, and I think the next several years, whether there's a small downturn or not, I think it's not going to affect us at all.
That's great, and you're nodding while Jean-Marc was sharing his perspective. So I know you're the COO of Damon Motors and co-founder. What are some of the things that you're doing to really make sure that we're going to the market ASAP and really be able to penetrate it?
Yeah, I think the big one for us, being a motorcycle company, first of all, motorcycles is a very traditional market, and it hasn't really changed a whole lot since the inception of the motorcycle. And so when we came out with our motorcycle, first thing that we said that it had to be green. Second, we had to address today's marketplace, which is really millennials and Gen Z, and what are the things that they are concerned about most? Frankly, it's safety, connectivity, and also cost. So our business model is direct to consumer, but we offer our motorcycle as a subscription. So it's like your mobile phone. So it's really a way of bundling a lease package. So lease plus insurance plus connectivity. So not only do you have a product from a technology point of view hits all the points, but you also have a financial delivery model to the end consumer that makes it easier for their buying decisions. And one thing about, Jean-Marc was saying a lot of things that I was absolutely nodding towards, which was starting with COVID. What COVID allowed people to do was actually go back and enjoy their hobbies, go back and enjoy themselves, and know that, you know what, I like to go out for a bike ride. And a bike ride became, an e-bike ride that goes farther. An e-bike ride, then they realized, you know what, I want to go even farther, perhaps even faster. Maybe I want to go on the highway. Hence, this is where Damon comes in. So we are addressing, a product that not only fits, from a personal point of view, but also, an emerging market point of view where densities, like population densities, are always going to go up. And so how do we address that?
It's actually a great segue to the next question that I prepared. I think, if we look at the past of what the industry was able to accomplish, and then we look at the present, what the technology companies are doing, what are the startup co-founders and entrepreneurs are doing, and look at the future. I know that the three operators on the panel, your company, you're all starting something from scratch. You're building the new standard. And also Curtis and I, we always wanted to invest in breakthrough technologies and who can really challenge the status quo. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the why and the so what question. Why are you doing it this way, and what are some of the insights and learnings that you have gained during the process? So curious if anyone wanted to take a stab at it.
I can jump in. I think that there's something incredible that happens when you have kind of, as an entrepreneur or as an organization, as a research and development, that when you have full end-to-end control of your product and you're not reliant on different work streams happening. And so I think what we're finding in the technology space generally, but also in automotive and electrification, is this kind of simultaneous workflow of software and hardware, and a lot of synergy in a buzzword, using a buzzword, of teams collaborating together to make a product. We know what we want to make, and so that's why we have to kind of take everything off the table, start fresh with almost designing, in our case, the car outside in. We know what we want it to be, and how do we get it there? And it gives you that freedom to kind of be creative.
Good point. And anyone else wanted to share insights or perspectives?
Go.
I think just to add, I totally agree with what you said. I think if you expect to achieve superior performance and standards, it's really tough when you're dragging old technology, old vehicle platform, and trying to modify. You're always trying to say, okay, how do we compromise? How do we get to where we want to be with all these challenges or obstacles in the way? And it's easier, more long-term, a better solution to start from scratch, design it from the get-go, in our case, a zero-emission bus, and then just build from there. Or else, if we start from the same old, we'll probably get the same old results. So for us, it's basically the same thing. We control, it's our design, and we took out all the stuff that was in the way, and now we can really aim for superior product, superior performance.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Jean-Marc was saying. It does take a whole bunch of courage and conviction to do everything in-house yourself. And you can ask yourself, well, why would you do that? Well, frankly, to control your IP and have a competitive edge. In the world of automotive, it is very traditional that any innovation comes from a tier 1 supplier. That tier 1 supplier can sell that ware to anybody, any car company, any motorcycle company in the world. So we at Damon decided that no, we're going to actually be our own tier 1. We're going to develop our own hardware. We're going to develop our own battery pack. We're going to make our own software. And the reason for that is, quite frankly, I'm being really selfish. I'm being selfish on behalf of my customer. I don't want to wait in line to a tier 1 because my stature as a new brand is quite small. I'm not Honda. I don't have that strength. At the same time, I don't want to share. I want us to be innovative. I want us to push forward on technology that we can innovate and not be beholden by other people who think they know what customers want when they don't talk to them. So by doing the way we're doing it is we are quite frankly, respecting the customer and being strong on their behalf.
Very, very helpful. Curtis, really curious to hear your perspective from the investor side, and what are some of the gaps that you are observing in the market right now, and also how do you diligent a company or potential startup in the EV or in the carbon reduction space? So curious to hear your perspective.
Yeah, as we think about the space as investors, we don't want to follow where all the money has already gone. You think about how much money's been invested in the space just on this stage alone. It's millions and millions of dollars, or even billions at this point. So trying to think, where is the market going in 5 to 10 years, and predicting based on a higher penetration of EV adoption, what are the problems going to be, and then what are some of the solutions that can solve these challenges. challenges. And Dom talked about safety and affordability as two of probably the largest barriers to EV adoption today. And I think those are two opportunities that we can invest in as investors in the space, both from a GHG reduction standpoint, but also to make money and to advance electric vehicles. You think about battery safety, fast charging, longer range, battery health. So many assets are going to be in the field. What are we doing to monitor those cars, those buses, those motorcycles? Exactly. More importantly, motorcycles. What are we doing to monitor those in real time? Eventually, there's going to be fires, there are going to be accidents, there's going to be problems with these batteries. How are we monitoring those remotely? So what software platforms are out there to monitor both the battery and the drivetrain? And then thinking about adoption of electric vehicles. We've heard a lot about fuel cells today, about different modes of transportation, but look at the demographic of EV buyers today. I think there's like less than 5% penetration of EVs of all vehicles purchased today. Of that, it's like 16% are high-income individuals, and only 2, 3, 4% are low-income individuals who are probably get more value out of electric vehicles from a total cost of ownership perspective. So what advancements can you invest in that solve sort of the charging deserts that exist in some of these low-income communities, where there's a lot of potential to both drive EV adoption, but then serve some of these communities that could benefit the most from EVs. So as I think about investments in the space, that's sort of how I think about the future in the next 5 to 10 years. Very
helpful. And to add my personal take on the question, one thing that I typically look for is that sense of humility from a few angles. So the first angle is just from a design thinking perspective, if the companies or the innovations has really put themselves in the shoes of the customer about the user experience, about accessibility, about how a person will feel once they sit in that vehicle, whether it's a motorcycle or a bus or a car. And also that sense of humility in terms of being able to not innovate for the sake of innovating it. And I think we have seen so many money and resources put into the space because of the buzz, because of the sizzle in the market. So for me personally, I typically just look for where is the stake, and if the entrepreneurs actually is really digging deep into the experience and be able to tease out the sizzle and then find the stake. So again, that's my personal take on it. And then the next question I wanted to ask the panel for your thoughts is, I want to talk about infrastructure. I think electrifying mobility has to go side by side with infrastructure. What's your take on, what are some of the positive signals that we're having either from the government or from the industry, from the business world, versus what are some of the gaps that you are observing in terms of, the ecosystem collaboration?
Maybe I'll go first, okay. Probably the difference between the world I live in versus with the consumer is every time we add buses and transit properties, they need infrastructure. They need a garage that's set up for more than one vehicle. If I buy a personal electric vehicle, all I have to worry about is one vehicle, one charging, and it's pretty simple. And in the case of a transit agency, they have to look at it and say, okay, we have to set up a garage. So that means, do we have the facility that is capable of handling all that volume? What does it need? It needs a whole lot of equipment and training. So it's a bigger infrastructure. Is not just an overnight, I'll buy an electric vehicle and I'll have it in operation next week. So they have to, there's lots of planning. There's actually someone here, Kevin, from Coast Mountain Bus, that can probably talk about this a lot more in a lot more details than I will, but it's just, it takes a few years, and in some cases just on the planning, get the budgets, because it's all public funds, get the engineering done, get the studies done, get the construction, actually get the buses, get the training, get them in service. So it's a longer cycle, but it's definitely happening across Canada. Some places are more advanced than others, but it's happening, and it's all the infrastructure. Buying the bus is the easy part. All the rest needs to happen as well, and it is happening.
And I think a lot of that is working with the local utilities and the local states, because I live in San Francisco, and to get an interconnection request for a utility upgrade can take up to 18 months, which is just unacceptable for an industry that's advancing as quickly as ours is. So how can you make that process quicker, or other alternative technologies where you can pair energy storage with EV charging that can accelerate these DC fast charging applications? So as I think about what can governments do, or what can like infrastructure providers do, it's like anticipating the convergence of storage and charging, I think, is a big opportunity that's been underinvested so far.
I had an opportunity to speak to a government in Southeast Asia about their plans on rolling out infrastructure. And one of the big problems that they told us is that they don't have an end product to inspire the infrastructure that they want to build. So they want to proliferate really fast. But if they don't have that end vehicle to actually utilize that infrastructure, then you have the public going, why did you spend so much money? Why did you supposed to spend so much of government dollars in putting in this infrastructure when I can't even find a vehicle to utilize this infrastructure? So, kudos to you, but at the same time, how can you help me as a consumer bring to this market a vehicle that I can use to utilize that infrastructure? So, that's a different angle. I never thought about it that way, because usually when you look at it from the product point of view, hey, infrastructure must be there, otherwise you're not going to get as much adoption. And so it goes both ways. That was really interesting to hear.
I think I agree with everything the panelists have said, and I would also say that typically when we think about infrastructure in the EV space, we're thinking about your DC fast chargers and your network across Canada or the US, and that's important. No one's denying that that's important. But I think for our customers, being that Lucid specifically is a vehicle for people switching over from a luxury gas car, it's a question that comes up significantly more often than not, because they can't. It's a customer mindset shift of people thinking, well, if I park my car in my garage, I'm going to be able to fill my gas tank. And so, when talking about infrastructure, I think that we need to think less about the public accessibility of DC fast chargers and more about the accessibility and investment in new condo developments, and making it easier for me to charge in my own driveway and my own garage at home, and the panel upgrades and all of that stuff. I think it's a consumer mind shift, but also where does the investment need to go into a little bit more structure there.
Okay, very, very helpful. And I think if we all caught the theme, which is capital resources and government. So I heard there's a government official team that's coming by today. We'll have notes for the reps there, and we have two more questions prepared, and then after that I will open up to the room, and we'll take some questions from the audience. So the next question I have to the four of you is. There are a lot of innovators that are attending today, and a lot of experts in the industry, and also, of course, there are a lot of ecosystem connectors and entrepreneurs. If you were to give people some recommendations and some advice as you build and operate your company, and also as you invest in more and more startup companies, what are some of the recommendations that you will give to people? Or, in other words, what are some of the hard lessons that you learned along the way? Because we all benefit from experiential learning and learning by making a few mistakes and experimenting.
I'll go first on this one, because I'm actually a first-time entrepreneur. I've been in the kitchen for a long time, helping entrepreneurs or visionaries see their dream to production. And so I would say that my business partner has been my greatest strength by far, because he's guided me through this journey to learn more about what entrepreneur is about. But at the same time, one thing I've learned through this journey is to always test your thesis. Always test your business thesis, because it's not just one thesis and that's all you're going to go. I mean, I applaud you for having that head down approach. I'm gonna do it no matter what. But I think if you can keep your head up and eyes open and hear and understand the feedback you're getting, it doesn't mean that a pivot is not bad. A pivot is not a bad word. A pivot is actually trying to find fit in your business. And so, for us, we've pivoted, I don't know, more times than I can remember, but it was always under the umbrella that we're going to be in motorcycles. We're going to make it safer. We're going to have it connected. It's going to be green. but how are we going to get there, right? So, I mean, I used to say this a lot to some of my investors and anyone who would care to listen to me, is that when we first came out, when we first started pitching, it was just Jay and myself and a slide deck, nothing more. No business, no employees, no prototype, nothing, just a dream. And so what we were able to do is the early days, some of the investors were just going, look, it's like you need quite a bit of capital, tens of millions of dollars compared to what you're asking for. And so what we did was we got our investors, those that would support us, we got them to look through the straw at this big picture, which is a motorcycle and safety and all these things, and I pointed them directly at safety. Because it didn't matter if you were a rider or not. Everyone, to a human being, you want them to be safe. And so that got the ball rolling. That was, in some ways, the first pivot. So instead of like just marching and trying to sell the motorcycle, this connected, smart, or safe motorcycle, we said, look, this is a safety system for motorcycles. Okay, maybe a licensing deal could work. So, and then you explore that, and you realize that maybe it's a really hard go because OEMs are really slow to make decisions. And then you realize that, well, actually, your original picture, big picture, your dream, was probably the right path, and that's where we are today. So, sorry for the long-winded answer, but you know, that's how we went through it. So,
It's always a journey. Please.
It's interesting. I was going to say something very similar to that. Find product market fit as quickly as possible and bootstrap your company as long as possible. Because trying to find product market fit and what's important to the consumer while taking venture funding is very expensive. And you want to wait as long as possible to take money from someone like me or venture capitalists until you figure out exactly where you want to be. Pivoting's okay, but try to do it as cost effectively as possible or use government programs, government grants to do that. The other piece is if you're selling into the automotive sector, think about the landscape and how you fit into the OEMs and the tier one suppliers. I think someone said it earlier, tier one suppliers innovate the most, they integrate with the OEMs. What is your exit strategy? So if you have a product, are you going to IPO? Are you going to be a standalone business? Are you going to sell to the tier ones? Or are you going to be acquired by an OEM? But sort of have a vision in your mind to figure out where you fit into that ecosystem because your sales process, who you hire, the product that you're developing is all going to change based on who the end customer is. And the end customer may not be me as a passenger driver or as the driver of a motorcycle. But ultimately, it's going to be the consumer or the purchaser of your business or of your product. And that, I think, can change how you finance or build the business as well.
Very helpful. Please, Adam.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think it's great. It's great to test your thesis, and I think that comes from having a product that you care about and you're passionate about. I mean, there's always that moment. Even yesterday we set up a little display in the plaza, and there was that moment in the morning where I'm like, oh, I hope people come. And then sure enough, as the day went on, it's like, oh, people actually really like this, and I'm happy, and I can talk about it. And so having a product that you're passionate about, that you know is good, makes the world of difference in this space.
Okay. Very helpful. Jean-Marc?
Maybe very short and very quick answer to that is just on our side. It's just there's the approach of you do everything yourself, which is fine. We've taken the approach of collaboration. We don't think we know everything. I think we're really good at what we do. But we're not a technology company and a manufacturing company and a distribution company and all of a sudden excel in everything. So we know what we're really, really good at. We have the IP, we have like the bones and the structure, the platform. But technology changes. Today, if you're looking at EV, it's fairly new technology. It's going to change in the next couple of years. It's going to change 5 years from now. And we can't be stuck with just what we think works today, because it most likely will be something different in a few years, and we need to be able to grab those opportunities to be able to change and not be stuck in the past or with something to say, okay, well, we can't move forward because we have this anchor that we're dragging along, and then we're just back to the old business model of we've always done it this way, so this is probably how it should be done. So that's kind of the whole sequence. We started from scratch so we could be nimble and agile and change with technology and find the best partners. So who's the best today for this or that? We partner with them today, and then hopefully it's going to be the technology years from now, but if it's not, then we're going to be able to adapt without crashing every time we change something in our business model.
Very helpful. As they say, don't ever let a crisis go waste. So, and before we break into just a bit of Q&A and take some questions from the audience, my final question to the panel is, and again, to clarify, I actually didn't practice this question to them, so this is going to be a non-rehearsed answer. Hopefully it just kind of adds a bit of color. So on the panel, 3 out of the 4 of you are actually building businesses and leading the company. And there's also the investors on the panel. What are some of the things that keeps you awake at night, and what you do to kind of mitigate and overcome that so that you recharge your tank and next day in the morning, you have the energy to your team?
That's a great question. Love the question. So really what keeps us, is we have so many things we want to do, so many projects. Like we started in 2016, so we designed from scratch. We have electric bus. We want to do hydrogen. We're working on that now. We want to do autonomous vehicles. We got so many things we want to do, and then we say, okay, how much can we handle at once? So then you say, okay, we want to do it all now, but realistically, we just kind of have to pick and choose, and it's just time and finding all the right people, the skill set to be able to work on and helping us to develop all of these, either partners or employees, and then we have to fund all that. So it's all good news. It's stuff that's keeping us awake, and it's all positive, but it's a lot, but it's exciting. It's not problems, and it's not so yeah, very positive, but.
Yeah, good problems to have. Yeah, Adam.
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways I can answer that question. I think the first one kind of goes back to your original question, which was kind of around the economic downturn, and that's definitely something that keeps us awake at night. As I mentioned before, thinking about the fact that this is a luxury vehicle, and those are some of the first things to go. That said, I mean, it's always positive, because I see that despite the fact that things are getting more expensive and new taxes and whatnot, we're confident in the product. We know that this is the longest range, fastest charging electric vehicle in the world, and people love it. And so we're still having this success, and those headwinds haven't slowed us down too much. But I would say the second answer to that question is just kind of maybe an electric vehicle or a vehicle sales thing, is that it's really hard to sell cars. It's too complicated. In this province, in Alberta, in Ontario, there are vehicle sales regulators that make it really, really difficult to sell in the direct-to-consumer model that Lucid and Tesla and Polestar and others are trying to do. And it's just we're waiting for the other shoe to drop for them to realize, oh, we should probably reform this process so we can make it a little bit easier for people to have access to this amazing technology.
Very helpful. Please.
Great question. Ironic, though, because I've been asked that question kind of a few times this week. I'm going to answer it a different way. At Damon, we have the best team. I'm sure everyone says that about their own company, and I'm sure they're awesome. We have people that are professionals at what they do. What keeps me up at night is people, is how these professionals, it's not about whether or not they can do their job, is how do they do it amongst other professionals, especially when we come into what would be considered a crisis, right? Like, why can't we make a decision to save our lives? Why under, budget constraints, manpower constraints, schedule constraints, that we can't find a way to get things done? One theme that we have at a company is, being scrappy. What does scrappy mean? How are you scrappy? I mean, they're scrappy at different levels. Like, as a business, we are scrappy because, we take our funding and we stretch those dollars, and we're able to achieve a great deal with very little capital. At the same time, we still have to continue to inspire the team that while, we have these dollars being stretched out, that it doesn't seem like we are taking them for granted, that we are pushing them to the limit beyond the breaking point. That's what keeps me up at night. It's really succinct, because again, this week has been a supreme challenge, because we have team members that they're working, but are they working the best way? And we're just, I'm trying to find the way for them.
Okay. Super thoughtful.
I have a mentor who says when you're in VC, your portfolio companies are like your children. And when they call at a weird hour, you get really nervous and you sort of get sick to your stomach. Like, why are they calling me right now? And I would say that keeps me up at night, but it's also tied to what I don't know. So the really interesting thing about attending conferences like this or just investing in this area is that you see so many new technologies. And I worry a little bit about the unknown. Like, what do I not know that's coming that's going to disrupt my portfolio companies or this industry? And that's a little bit about what keeps me up at night as well, is sort of trying to predict or understand what's coming next that could disrupt my companies. I don't think it's fair for you to throw that question at us, so I'm going to flip it back on you. What keeps you up at night?
So it's the one thing that keeps me awake at night is that sense of responsibility to the investor money and to the entrepreneurs that we're supporting. Because the last thing that I want to do is to just provide the money, AKA that's what we call it, dumb money. And I want it to always be a value add. So to your point, right? It's one where how can we make sure that we're being responsible for the capital and I'm treating everyone's money like how I'm treating my own money, which I am putting my own money into the firm as well. But it's that sense of responsibility, and I think it's one where I think everyone has been saying being empathetic is a really, really important skill, but equally I think being compassionate is also, if not more important. And I was reading a book the other day. It demonstrates the difference between being empathetic versus being compassionate. I think being empathetic is really us, giving someone a hug or being that sounding board for the person when that person or when the entrepreneur is going through a hard time, when they're hitting a challenge. But then in the meanwhile, being compassionate is how can we dispassionate ourselves from the situation to be able to really rationalize the situation, be able to provide solutions. It's not saying that we're cold-hearted, but that's my way of understanding that sense of responsibility. That's what keeps me awake at night, is how can I be responsible to the companies that we're supporting and to the investors that we're investing on behalf. It is a tough question. That's why I put it at the end of the day. Okay, so we have about 5 to 7 minutes remaining, and we'd love to take some questions. I think this lady, she raised her hand first, so I'll go to you after. Do we have a mic, or do we? Is it okay if you just shout out the questions? You know what? Let me give you this.
Okay, so change equals pain. And governments like to regulate this and tax that and subsidize the other. And some of it causes pain for consumers. What do you think is the best way to achieve the goals and the visions that you have without bringing further pain to consumers along the way?
Did you have someone in mind that you'd like to hear from directly? Just.
That one's a scary question. I don't want to answer it. It's an awesome question, but you go ahead. I'm going to think about it.
I thought you said you had the tough question. I think this is a tough one. I don't know if I have an answer because I'm trying to think of a specific example. I'm just thinking of what we could do at our end that really, because I'll look at what we do. We basically take cars off the road. So how much does it cost? You need to invest on one side to have something to happen. So you need to invest in, you need to support the transit systems and say, okay, you need infrastructure, you need equipment, you need training, you need drivers, you need this, that, and planning. So obviously that comes at a cost, but there's also a cost if you don't do that. Then how many more cars are, and it's not just cars, it's just how much more vehicles do you want on the road? That's also, there's also a cost to that, congestion, pollution, like all of that adds up. So I think we're more of a solution, a lot more of a solution than the problem. Does it come cheap? No, absolutely not. But doing nothing or not doing enough is probably going to end up costing a whole lot more, and financially in direct cost and also environmentally. So I think it needs to be done. Obviously, our politicians have to, they're the ones that are up front answering the citizens every day and having to justify their decisions and how much is enough and how much is too much and what's waste and what's not waste. So I think it's probably a politician could answer that one probably a little bit better than we could, but I'd say that's my take on it.
I'll have a different take on your question. It's really nuanced. It's a good question. Maybe on the financial side. So from an EV perspective, I mean, the government has reduced the incentive of buying an EV. So it used to, there used to be a cap that was, I believe, $100,000, which is the actual vehicle cost. Now that's dropped down significantly, down to $50,000 or lower. And I'm not saying that everyone should be, buying into a luxury car, but the thing is that, now the government is not supporting the consumer's ability to, basically to incentivize them to buy EVs. And so for us, with our subscription model, it's kind of, in a way, doing that. It's not so much putting dollars in your pocket, but it's actually giving you a flexibility, a low payment option, right? Having the the finance spread over a period of time so that the month per month cost is much lower. So even though the government may not support you with a high incentive, that's okay. We have a subscription model that allows a low payment plan so that you can have the best EV vehicle of your dreams. There's no excuse other than you want to just ride on two wheels.
Great. Any other takes on the question? Great. So, thank you. I think we have time for the last question. So, floor is yours.
Interesting enough. So I was curious, for anybody, maybe mostly Dom and Jean-Marc, but you both talked about starting from the beginning, creating something from scratch. Yet I'm curious, in doing so, how do you stay true to what your vision is, but approach your kind of make versus buy decisions of maybe not trying to completely boil the ocean in every area and do everything yourselves? And I guess also the other thing is supply chain issues now. So how do you do that, and maybe not innovating for innovation's sake, like you mentioned as well?
I definitely want to save room for Jean-Marc because he has awesome answers. It's actually our business model is how we approach make versus buy. Yeah, we have made a commitment to do everything in-house. However, there's certain things that we just can't, because to your point, Jean-Marc, earlier, we're not the experts, right? There's certain commodity components that, quite frankly, I don't want to invest in. I'm not a radar company. I don't make cameras. I'd rather buy that. The commoditization of those components by the car auto world is driving the price per unit down. So I'm taking full advantage of it from a supply chain point of view. On the other hand, where supply chain has hurt us on the make side is now that I have many suppliers that have lead times that all stack up against the fact that they're making something custom for us. Right, so that's in some ways what hurts us, and we have to be able to endure past it. So, Jean-Marc?
Yeah, and you said both of us, the three companies here started from scratch really, so if you have something you can add as well. I just say we look at where we add value. How can you add, if we're going to do something ourselves, it's because we're adding value. We think we either need to control the IP or the privacy part of that part of the equation, but it's just who adds the value, costs, and yeah, it's pretty simple. Probably not as complicated of an answer as probably maybe some would think, as you just keep it simple and said, and if somebody can do it better, faster, cheaper than we can, why would we do that?
I think the thing that I would add to that, and I fully recognizing that I don't actually make Lucid Airs myself, I just sell them. But I think in talking to our designers and our engineers, it's about what's going to add value, yes, to the customer, kind of that end-to-end user experience. And so where we will err on the make side is something that is of intrinsic value and really going to make that experience different and unique for those customers, and maybe where we'll err on the buy side is those components or those elements of our business model that are kind of a necessity of function, but not necessarily intrinsic to the brand.
And you sort of started with technology first too, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. Curtis, any final comments on this question, especially around the supply chain challenges?
I would just add that billions of dollars a year is being invested in optical sensors, chipsets, like advances in telecommunications, all that's being integrated by the major OEMs. So to the extent that you can leverage some of that in your own products, just reduces the amount that you need to invest in your own.
Excellent.